Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a chilling piece of modern history. We're looking at the alleged real-life haunting of the Shea family. Listen, this isn't just your typical collection of campfire ghost stories. What we have here is a documented timeline of a family's descent into absolute terror inside a centuries-old home in Lamar, Arkansas. We're going to map out exactly what they experienced, what paranormal investigators actually found, and how the media later twisted their trauma for television. To really grasp the weight of this story, picture this. You've just moved into a massive new house. The mother of the family, Jaimie Shea, was walking into her local Walmart to grab some groceries. The door greeter immediately recognized her, casually noted where she lived, and delivered a really unsettling warning. He told her, point blank, that he lived there as a kid and yeah, it's haunted. This wasn't some distant neighborhood rumor. This was a former resident casually stating, as a matter of fact, that the home the Shaws just moved their 3 young kids into was full of ghosts. Okay, let's dive into how this all started. Section 1, a historic bargain, moving to Lamar, Arkansas. Back in October 2003, Jaimie and her husband Ben were just looking for a spacious place to raise their growing family. When this property popped up at a shockingly low price, it felt like the deal of a century. But man, that bargain came with some incredibly heavy history. The sheer age of this place is staggering. Parts of it were built in the late 1700s, making it one of the oldest private residences in all of Arkansas. There's even the date 1811 mysteriously carved into one of the 4 huge fireplaces. And over the centuries, local records show this building was a stagecoach stop, a speakeasy, and even a county jail. It's like a giant puzzle of the town's darkest secrets. And if the house's resume wasn't intense enough, the surroundings were just as heavy. Imagine trying to relax in your backyard, knowing there's a literal Confederate cemetery sitting just 100 yards away, full of weathered, unreadable graves from the 1800s. In fact, during a yard sale early on, a customer actually put her hand on the porch railing and told Jaimie she could feel a lot of spirits in the house. But at the time, Jaimie optimistically brushed it off, just blaming the weird vibes on the ancient graveyard out back. Which brings us to Section 2, Unsettling Discoveries. The warning signs ignored. The excitement of getting such a massive, beautiful property completely blinded them to some deeply bizarre clues right from the start. Imagine doing your first walkthrough and finding an upstairs fireplace completely boarded up, and on those boards, a spray-painted pentagram surrounded by melted bits of candles, looking exactly like the aftermath of a seance. Even worse, someone had spray-painted the full name of a local boy who had tragically passed away right onto the wood. I mean, huge red flags, right? But Jaimie and Ben rationally dismissed it. They just figured local teens had broken in to mess around while the house was vacant. It's wild how our brains can normalize the abnormal just to cope, but that's exactly what happened. They bought the house anyway. So what happened next? Well, things started escalating. Fast. It started slow, but soon Ben was waking up to the sound of a phantom baby crying on the baby monitor, even though their baby wasn't upstairs. Then their 5-year-old, Bridger, started complaining about multiple voices talking over each other in his room. And then came the physical stuff. We're talking loud fists pounding on the walls, heavy footsteps stomping up the stairs in the middle of the night, the distinct sound of a rubber ball just bouncing down the steps. Hallway light bulbs were constantly burning out, literally draining fresh batteries in an hour. The stress was compounding day by day. The house was quite literally coming alive. Moving on to Section 3, Trance and Tragedy, the breaking point. As these creepy, spaced-out incidents became aggressively physical, the sleep deprivation really began destroying the family's health. Things shifted from spooky to downright terrifying. One night, while the parents were at the computer, 5-year-old Bridger walked downstairs in a complete trance. He locked eyes with his mom, got right in her face, and let out this terrifying, completely unrecognizable laugh. Jaimie literally thought her son was possessed. And, to make matters worse, the family dog suddenly sprinted upstairs, cornered something completely invisible against Bridger's bed, and started barking viciously. Moments later, the dog's leash, which was hung up securely, mysteriously flew onto the stairs. Then, the unthinkable happened. While driving her kids home from school, just a quick 3-mile trip, Jaimie swerved to dodge a misplaced construction barrel. She overcorrected. The minivan flipped head over heels multiple times. In the chaos, her 13-year-old daughter, Tori, was ejected, and the van rolled directly on top of her. But get this, it's an absolute miracle. Heavy rain from the days before had turned the ground into deep mud. That soft earth absorbed Tori's body and saved her from the crushing weight of the vehicle. She did suffer severe compression fractures, but she survived.
Now, this is absolutely crucial because it grounds the whole narrative. Even though the terror at home was peaking, they actually saw a shadow figure in the window the very day of the crash. Jaimie kept a super rational perspective. She didn't blame a ghost for grabbing the steering wheel. She recognized that the intense sleep deprivation, total exhaustion, and the sheer terror of their living situation were what nearly cost them their lives. Have you ever been so exhausted you literally couldn't think straight? That's the brutal reality of living in a state of constant fear.
Section 4. The Ouija Investigation. Caspar arrives. After Tori spent 10 days in the hospital and was finally recovering, Jaimie decided enough was enough. They couldn't live like this. So she brought in the Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research, or KSPR. The minute their psychic medium, Violet Lowe, stepped into Little Bridger's bedroom, she felt a massive, heavy shift in energy. She described the room as being filled with a sea of people, just a crowd of negative spirits. And, this was deeply unsettling, but it completely validated what Bridger had been saying for months, that he kept hearing multiple, overlapping voices talking all at once. So, the team decides to pull out a Ouija board, and things take a really dark turn. The planchette spells out the name Seth. The investigators push further and ask, "When were you alive?" The board firmly spells out one word: never. I mean, chills, right? Immediately after claiming it was never human, the planchette starts doing continuous figure eights before suddenly stopping and pointing dead straight at the group's technical camera. And this is where it gets crazy. Right as the board points at the equipment, the tech guy checks his monitor. Forming right out of the ceiling on the screen is a tall, transparent head and the vague outline of a human figure. It just lingered there, disappearing and reappearing. Jaimie said the second this happened, the entire house just plunged into this ice-cold, malicious feeling, unlike anything they had experienced before. Which leads us to Section 5, Track 99, The Final Straw and Media Embellishment. After that investigation, the Sheas were absolutely done. They moved out of state, turned the property into a rental, and their story blew up. The Discovery Channel even featured them in a 2007 episode of A Haunting. But honestly, the reality was heavily embellished by the TV producers. Just look at the contrast. While the real trauma was a devastating exhaustion-induced car crash, the network decided to show a phantom ghost running into the middle of the road. It highlights a really frustrating reality about true paranormal media. A family's grounded, real-life trauma is constantly rewritten by Hollywood for a cheap jump scare. The actual events were terrifying enough without inventing a ghost jumping in front of a minivan. But the true final scare, that happened entirely away from the cameras. A few months later, the family went back just to check on the house. It was early evening, they were casually playing cards in the kitchen, just trying to feel things out, see if the house's energy had finally settled down. They're just hanging out, listening to some music on a burned CD. Out of nowhere, the CD player inexplicably jumps to track 99. A weird voice starts playing through the speakers, repeating the exact phrase, "You need to help," just over and over on this endless robotic loop. The family frantically grabs the disc, checking it, but there was absolutely no song with those lyrics anywhere on that CD. Completely sick to their stomachs, they grabbed whatever they could and left that property for good. The Shea family's whole ordeal really goes to show how a place soaked in history can somehow hold on to the darkest parts of its past. The family survived and moved on, but that house is still standing today. Given the centuries of heavy history baked right into its walls, it leaves us with one incredibly haunting question to wrap this up. What entities might still reside in Lamar, Arkansas? Thanks for joining the Explainer today, and stay curious.